So I think you all noticed that Sherry joined us, and we asked her to come in this morning to, we need a very thorough discussion here about the library remodel that's in our multi-year plan here. So what we kind of want to do is we want to have you hear her thoughts on what she and her staff believe that the needs are, and Chris may be covering that part. And then also what their wants are. There's some items in the library that we know that must be addressed. And then we have to also think about what are we going to do as a library during the construction and what are our options. So this is going to be talking about what do we want to see in our new library, and then also our thoughts on how we might continue to provide a library service, and then also a timeline. We had said to you last year, as we're starting to try to do the multi-year budgets, there's it's hard when you're trying to do a multi-year budget. You're trying to also predict what your costs might be, but you're trying to do that before you even design something. So we had tentatively put some numbers in there as to what we could begin preparing for. I think in meeting with the architect, it has become clear to us with the items that we have to address that we are going to need additional funds to do all that we want to do and need to do. And so, but we've also looked at our multi-year budget and how we can accomplish that. And so we'll also talk you through that. But our focus this morning is we really need to be able to define the scope for the architect so that he can, by our June capital meeting, give us a good number as to what that's going to cost. So that's what we really want to address this morning.
So I'm gonna let Sherry come talk to you, but the way this is kind of organized is, this is Sherry's, and then a byproduct of that is her staff, and then the whole city staff's thoughts on the library remodel, kind of organized like this. We have some, what we call known issues. These are just things that they have to deal with every day that they know are problems that the remodel has always been, hey, this is what we want to address. Then she has kind of a list of what they've identified as needs, things that we need to do beyond just the known kind of, the known issues are almost structural or layout type things, okay? And then the needs are kind of how we want to address some needs that we have. And then she's got a little group of wants that, you know, if the world was perfect, this is all the other stuff we'd like to do. I want her to kind of go through this, and y'all stop and ask her questions if you want to, but at the end of that, then the key here is to hear from you guys if there's something that you're aware of that we're missing, that we're not considering. Because what we would like to do is basically kind of charge the architect with, here's these lists of these things. And what I've asked the architect to do is, once you get past our known issues and try to cover our needs, when you come back with this pricing that we're going to be looking at for budgetary purposes, I almost it doesn't work perfect like this, but as much as you can, almost like an a la carte. So here's kind of your tranches, and you can do this, you can do this, because it's going to go back into what we feel like we can afford for the project. So if you'll be thinking like that when she comes through it, the other thing I would that my tape did not hold. The other thing I would tell you is that this is not the planning and engineering building. It's obviously the public library, so there's going to be a much more public involvement type process here. And what we're currently thinking is that once we hear from you guys and take that direction, we would like to do a shortened version of this presentation at the EDC Monday night. It's posted already. As Sherry giving the library update, that we would just kind of tell them where we are here. There may be somebody on EDC that might have some input to something there that we'd want to consider. Then we would also talk with the library board, because we're going to be wanting to seek, obviously, their input on, again, Sherry's and the staff's vision and seek their input. And then kind of the next little deal is working with ELF. And ELF is, I'm not trying to say we don't want their input, we do want their input, but we have been talking with ELF since they finished the tile project. They're always looking for their next project. We believe that there's going to be something in this library renovation project that maybe is outside of the scope of what the city is able to do, but we think it's a good project that will be a natural fit for ELF, that ELF can wrap their arms around with and do some fundraising, and maybe that could be their contribution, which obviously stands right in line with all the contributions they've made to the existing library. So a project is kind of what ELF is looking for. And then finally, just the overall public involvement, which our current thought on that is being able to do not only the existing library patrons, but even try to even throw the net a little wider and try to do some survey type things. Maybe not as broad as what would you like to see in your new library, but maybe a little bit more, the questions might be more along the lines of the library currently offers the following services, you know, rank these in order of how you use them or what's important to you and some of those kind of things. We'd be able to take all that back again and roll into the architect's vision with the idea of being able to come to y'all at that June meeting and saying, here's where we're at, here's what our vision is going to cost us, now what do we need to do? And as Loretta said, and we'll walk through a little bit at the end of this kind of a timeline, we're still on that timeline to do construction in FY19, so we still got that kind of floating year that'll enable us to do all this process. So, Sherry, you're up.
All right.
And I'm gonna let you sit right here, and I got the mouse on the slide chain. Like I did, and we'll go blank on
All
it.
right, thank you. All right, thank you all for having me this morning. I will jump right into what we're calling the known issues here. And as Chris kind of mentioned, I consider this the core of what we're requesting in the library remodel. And these are things that just due to the age of the building are needing some updating and replacing. That includes our lighting system, our HVAC system, electrical outlets are inadequate, the acoustics are an issue, as well as the ceiling discoloration that's been an issue for quite a while that we've tried to address with the metal discs on the ceiling. We've got an issue with our walkway being out of compliance with ADA. The entrance doors, the three on the different sides of the lobby, have reached the end of their natural life. We also have an inability to clean or repair the lobby windows because of the way that the awning and the windows meet. We've got some drainage issues to address, and the drive-up book drop, the turning radius is a problem for folks. You're shaking your head.
Because I have to offer the beginning on that.
Yeah, so,
I have to get out.
so those are kind of the
What's great
things
for my
that,
small car?
small cars are fine, but
Small
you
cars
know,
are great.
SUVs are frequently doing three-point turns just to try to drop their books off, so.
And in speaking with the architect, these, some of the issues regarding the budget will be that these are not inexpensive items, you know, and also keep this in mind when we start talking about how to provide the library service during the renovation. This ceiling work, if you all remember, a great number of years back, we began to notice a lot of discoloration on the ceiling, and so we brought in the prior architect that had done that building, and there was really no solutions other than those metal discs that we put on that ceiling. So all of that's going to have to be scraped off and cleaned off, and you figure with taking out the lighting, those lights are kind of that bowl, and those have been very difficult to maintain and for the last several years. So when you do all of that, you can envision there's going to be a substantial amount of work occurring within that main portion of the library, because I really spent quite a bit of time with the staff trying to figure out how can we stage this in such a way that we just move to one side or move to the other side. You know, how can we do that and continue to operate? And they'll go through that in detail. But when you start to look at this kind of stuff that's going to have to be done, the HVAC, that's going to have to be totally replaced. It's at its end of life. Those kinds of things are going to make it almost impossible to continue to function in that space during the renovation. So
HVAC is a good example where that's a boiler system. It is past end of life. We've had a project before to replace it, and what we said was, hey, let's string that along and let's do it as part of the library renovation. And so we've done that. So I always feel bad to Sherry a little bit. I think when you say library renovation, you tend to think of more how it's going to benefit the patrons, and not that the air conditioning system doesn't do that, but that's kind of that is a high dollar item, but it's kind of, if you're a patron there, you think, it's not, you can't touch, feel, see it, but it is absolutely a cost of the renovation, but it's one of those costs that's kind of a hidden beast to a lot of people.
What did you say about the acoustics? Is it because it's echoey or what?
It is, and that's kind of been a problem from day one. And that's just more of a function of how library service has changed over the years also, because we used to go into a library and expect a quiet place, and but as things have changed and libraries have gotten less quiet, it's more of a problem.
Mr. Price, the architect, was showing us in there one day, and this is one of those things like super simple, and you think, well, how come I never realized this? That library is an arch. Well, basic acoustics is an arch takes all sound and it bounces back, but it bounces back at a focus, which is why at the front of the library you can almost hear a conversation going on at the back, even though the person's not being loud. It's the way the acoustics focus. So he said, I mean, that's inherent in the design of an arch. I mean, that's why when you hear people sing in the Capitol Rotunda that it sounds great, because the sound bounces back down. So there are little tricks that they can do to change that, but not necessarily get rid of what is the architectural beauty of the arch. And the example I'd give you, if y'all toured the Planning and Development building, in the Fuller Room, which was the old library, we did some things in there. We were really wanting to preserve the Fuller Room because there's a certain historical piece to that, to the city, but the ceiling was very, very tall. And they lowered the ceiling, but then right over the meeting table area, there's even like a little acoustical drop type ceiling. I think Bob was probably the first person to notice it. He said, I spent years in there in DSG meetings and couldn't really hear around the table what people were saying. And I mean, it's the same room, same dimensions. It's just got a little bit of this certain acoustical drop ceiling Bob, you can hear it good in there now. I think you told me the other day. So I think there's some tricks like that that they're going to do. Too bad we're not in there right now.
Any other comments or questions about the needs of the building itself?
While we're here, let's talk about an ADA entrance walkway. There's been some discussion of that back entry, and there's a perception from folks that that's a closer entry. I would suggest that we will share with the architect the concerns for that, but it is very likely that we will still end up with the front entry as being our ADA accessible route. Now, there may be people who can and will choose to use the back entry, but when they factor in the ADA rules, it is most likely that that will continue to be served from that front entry.
Because that's where the handicap spaces are, is around the corner and then also right there in the main lot.
And we'll certainly look at that. There's a perception that it is too far, and so maybe there are just things that we can do that make it more, that people perceive that it is more accessible. We'll have the architect look at that and we'll share with him the concerns, but we've got to make sure that we keep those spaces closest to the ADA accessible route.
And here, they're right across from the walkway.
But we often hear people that want to come in the back entrance, and that's not, and certainly if they have the mobility to do that, it's not a problem, but it may not be our published ADA accessible route.
There's folks that like to park along Shepherd
Right.
and go down that back entrance. The reality is I mean, you can do that, and nobody's going to keep you from doing it, but it is not going to probably be cost effective to make both entrances ADA compliant. And even if you did, they wouldn't totally be ADA compliant, because part of ADA compliance is you have to have the most direct route from the parking. So if you're parking along Shepherd Drive, that's not even real parking, if you will. So that's probably where we're going to end up.
All right. Oh, sorry, I went,
You better go back one.
yeah.
I was going to say, we're moving right along.
Sherry's feeling pressure to stay on that schedule.
Moving on to what we're calling needs, and these are the things that, in my mind, when I'm saying need, is these are the things to address the changes in our culture and library services that have happened over the last 20 years. So that includes things like updating the color scheme and finishes, improving the traffic flow of the building itself. We have a big bottleneck at the entrance that is problematic because we're doing most of our transactions right there at the front door while people are trying to come in and out. So I would really like to see that front entrance way reworked to make it more workable in terms of just moving around the building.
Sherry, would you include possibly more than one checkout location? Because like I know Bedford Library has a separate checkout area for the kids checkout.
There's a couple of ways we could go there. We could do that. I would really like to see the ability to check out with a mobile device wherever you are in the building. So if you're approaching a staff member anywhere, you know, we're not quite there yet technology-wise, but in a couple of years, I think we'll be able to just do it all on a tablet or something like that. So we'd still have a checkout desk to deal with account issues and sending up new cards and that kind of thing. And probably some self-check machines where you could just do it all yourself without having to talk to a person if you don't want to.
And those are great.
Yes. And then the third way to handle that is just to, if you're working with a staff member, just go ahead and take care of it right there while you're doing that and save the patron the time of having to go to another location, so.
Is there technology that you could work on that, the anti-theft device, so that it doesn't beep as I walk out the door if I do it mobilely like that?
Yes,
Okay.
and that's kind of the piece we're missing right now.
Okay.
And I'll talk about RFID in just a second, but that's all part of that as well. So, and then handicap parking we talked about, and then just generally we want to see a more open and browsable environment. The way we look for books has changed. You're not necessarily going down the aisles and looking for that one particular book. You're browsing, you're wanting to see what's new, a lot more displays, a lot more inviting shelving arrangements and that sort of thing. And then more specifically in terms of space usage, the children's area is one where we need a lot more space. Just the way that library services have evolved, we're doing a lot more on the children's side of things as far as classes, and we're just really jam-packed on that side of the building. So I can see the space usage shifting a bit in terms of how much we're devoting to children versus adults. There are, we'd like to see a flat floor in the storytime room, because while that terraced seating is really great for an actual story time when you have kids sitting on steps, that means that room really isn't as usable for other things. So making a flat floor would make that room a little more flexible. We'd like to see space for the Library Foundation to have an ongoing book sale rather than the 2 book sales that they have now that are a lot of work and a lot of manpower. Physically, it's really hard on the group. They could probably accomplish the same amount of fundraising if they had a dedicated space where they had items for sale all year round. And then one of the biggest things that we get requests for is study space, small group space, just places where people can have some quiet, and as well as classroom space as well. That's going to be one of the biggest needs that we have. And then the last thing on this slide is just comfortable furniture and seating areas. It's people are just looking for a place to sit with their book, with their laptop, whatever they're wanting to accomplish in the library, and just have that comfortable seating areas to do. And then as far as the staff, what we have now is we have 3 service areas within the library, and that's a reflection of, in the mid-90s, libraries were very specialized as far as what the staff did. You had staff that all they did was they sat at a desk and answered reference questions all day. You had other staff that all they did was sit and check out books all day. It's not really like that anymore. You have people who still specialize, but they are very able to do all of the things that occur in a library. So having a single point of service will allow us to make more efficient use of our staff. And while we'll still have people who specialize in their different areas, you know, it's just as good service to the public to have them be able to answer the question and check out their book at the same desk versus I'll answer your question down here and oh, then you've got to walk down to the checkout desk to actually check out your book. So I like to see that. And then that will then allow me to deploy the staff in different ways. And that could be anything from more outreach to maybe we expand the open hours. And there's a lot more that we can do with fewer service points. And same thing with staff offices. We're a very collaborative group, but when you have offices in 3 corners of the building, that is a limiting factor. And I would like to see the staff in the same general area of the building. Digital signage is something that would be a great help to us in terms of publicizing our programs and informing people who come into the building about where things are. RFID is, if you're not familiar with RFID, it's a radio frequency ID tag is what it is. And right now we use a magnetic security system in all of our items, and that's the beep as you go out the door that happens sometimes. It is not perfect. You may have experienced getting beeped when you walked out the door even though you weren't doing anything wrong. RFID is just a different way of protecting your items and identifying them, and it allows you to do more with your items as far as things like you can do self-checks that are better than the one we have now. You can do things like book sorters that give you some efficiency in letting a machine do something that a person previously did. So instead of a person taking a book and scanning it and checking it in, you have a conveyor belt that takes that, scans it, and then sorts it into a bin and gets it ready to go back on the shelf. So that's a way to work smarter. Any questions about the needs and how the remodel might change the way we serve?
The centralized staff offices, so if we take 2 offices and bring them into one, do those now become sort of functional rooms for you to use? Or were you looking to just generate and take out walls where those offices were previous?
Well, like one example would be in the children's area. Their staff area is really small and cramped anyway, and so like one idea would be to move them into a different area of the library and then use that as storage for children's programs. So yeah, that the existing staff offices could be repurposed as study rooms, or
Storage
there's a lot of possibilities.
I'm intrigued by the RFID. I assume that's not an expensive proposition to ship to that. That's current technology, right? I mean, that's.
It's gotten cheaper in the past 5-10 years. Every item needs a tag, and a tag is, depending on the kind of tag, they're maybe 25 cents each.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about 100,000 items.
We have 100,000 items.
About, yeah. So, and that's a project that we can do before we start the remodel. And it can be kind of pieced out and done independent of all the other things that might be going on during that time.
When you first said RFID, I was thinking that it seems like there might be technology that would allow you to, if you walk in with your smartphone and you're looking for certain kinds of books, it will take you right to the book, if wherever it is on the shelves in the library, without having to ask anybody.
That is happening some places. It's not really rolled out to public libraries like ours yet, but some academic libraries are experimenting with things like that. So I think eventually we will see that. It's called micro-location, I think. Anyway, but yeah, it uses GPS to really zero in within a few feet of wherever the item that you're looking for. Any other questions or comments on the needs? Okay. Well, now we'll talk about wants. And
Nice transition.
This is 27 slides, by the way.
And you know, I think we could run a great library with just the needs being met, but the wants are what will give us the wow factor and really allow us to do great things. And the things on my wants list are kind of the areas where I feel a little bit of constraint right now as far as the services that we're able to provide. So, and this kind of goes along with my vision of what I see the new library being, I guess. So, and what I'm interested in hearing from y'all too on the wants area is just to know that in some ways the sky's the limit. You know, I want everybody to kind of realize that libraries these days are truly a reflection of the community. And if you think in your mind, here's a problem we have in the community, I wonder how we can solve it, there's probably a public library somewhere who's addressing that and is taking it on. So I guess that's kind of the thinking that we can go into with this when we talk about what our wants are. So anyway, some of these are limited now just by things like plug locations in our building. We have things like fax machine, copier, scanner, and they're located now where we have a plug. I would like to have a business center that would sort of locate all of those in one place and make more of a one-stop shop. I'd like to see a vending area in the lobby for coffee and tea. Coffee and tea goes with books hand in hand, and that's the kind of experience that I want people to have when they come to our library. The preschool learning activity center and the children's science and discovery classroom and after-school learning space, these are all things that we are doing now to some degree, but we're constrained because we don't have the space to dedicate full-time space to it. For example, on the preschool learning activity center, we set up stuff once a week in our storytime room that is really a preschool learning activity center, but we gotta take it down because we don't have the space to dedicate to having it there all the time. I would like to see the library become the place that parents and families think of when they think, okay, I've got a preschooler. Maybe they're not in a formal preschool daycare situation, but they can come to the library, and by the time they get to school, they will know their colors, their letters, their numbers, and they will be ready to learn. Same thing with the science and discovery classroom. We do our classes that are, we do them wherever we have space. If we had a dedicated space for this kind of thing, we could make a really big impact. And when I say that, I'm saying enhancing the things that are going on in the school. We're working really closely with HBIC on a lot of different things. And what I want the library to be is the place where kids and families come to enhance and expand on what the kids are getting at school. So, and then as far as after-school learning, we have so many kids in this town who don't have anywhere to go after school. I want them to come to the library, but I want our space to be optimized for that. Right now, we're kind of doing what we can. We've got the bubble, which we turned into from a storage room that is a space for teens. And we're doing programming and so forth for them, but sometimes we've still got problems after school because we don't have the space that we need to really accommodate the kids that we see coming, so.
Have y'all ever been up there at 3:30?
Yes.
Yes.
I have been ran over up there.
This is where Sherry says she wants the kids to come there. They come there. I mean, she doesn't even have to want them to go there. They come. They are there. The question is, can you give them something to do that is productive, keeps them out of trouble, and keeps the experience for the other patrons, like it should be. So this is a don't fight it. This is a try to work with what you got,
Exactly.
because they're going to come.
Exactly, yeah.
Sherry, this teen room in the front at the entrance with the beanbag chairs and stuff, that always has kids in it, right?
It's always full, and it's too small.
Yeah.
And then a dedicated making and creating space. Some libraries are doing full-blown what they call maker spaces, where you'll have things like 3D printers, laser cutters, woodworking, sewing machines, just whatever you can think of as far as creation. I don't know that our community is asking for something full-blown like that, but we do need a space for making and creating. We've had great success with our Thursday night Make It and Take It group and different craft programs and things, and I think that's just something that people are kind of looking for these days, is a place to gather and make and do things like that. So this might be some kind of flexible space that can be used for other things also, but we need storage and electricity and all that kind of thing too. So
Are your bullet points in order based on what you would prioritize?
not necessarily.
Okay.
No. And just some other things to kind of think about too. Laptop and tablet vending. Right now we devote a lot of floor space to banks of desktop computers and workstations. And we expect people to come to our designated spot, get on the computer and do what they need to do. What I'd like to see is, instead of that, if we have more comfortable seating areas, we would then offer just a bank of laptops or tablets. People would then come and get and then take wherever they want to work and do what they need to do there. So instead of requiring that people come to this particular table to use a computer, just go get your own computer, take it to whatever spot you want to in the library, and then it makes for a more comfortable and pleasurable experience. And that's all based on RFID as well. So with RFID, you can take, you can actually vend out those laptops within your building. So you say, swipe your library card, here's your laptop, and bring it back in 2 hours. And same thing with DVD and dispensing units. That's the kind of red box type concept where instead of having shelves and shelves of DVDs, maybe you just have one dispenser where you just pick what you want and get it right then.
That would give you a lot of extra space to begin with.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Blockbuster should have some laying around.
Exactly. Electrical outlets and charging stations in the furniture, this is just kind of becoming more and more standard these days where you just plug into the top of your table or whatever to get your electricity instead of hunting around in the corner for a plug. So. And then Idea Box is just a idea that I saw in another library where this kind of speaks to what kind of experiences do we want people to have when they come to the library. And what they do is they take there's a designated room, and every month there is a different interactive display. So 1 month might be write a letter and post it on the wall. Another month might be here's some building blocks to play with, and it would change every month. So the idea here is that even if you're coming to the library just to kind of see what's new, and it's all about having those unique and interesting experiences that go along with I'm coming in to check out a book, or I'm coming in to take my child to an early literacy class. So.
Could we incorporate that now?
Pardon?
Could we incorporate that now? That just sounds fun.
It does sound fun, and if I had a space for it, I would.
Okay,
Yeah. So.
good answer.
So that's the end of my list. So now I'd like to hear from you guys what you think you might want to see in the library.
So, does this also, we talked a little bit about meetings, but I'm trying to understand, are we talking inside your door, or are we also talking in the community room to the right?
As far as additional meeting space and classroom space?
Renovation.
The renovation will include the whole building. including
Okay,
the meeting room.
so as far as the color schemes, the tile flooring, entryway, whatever, that's all up for discussion as well? Okay.
Yes.
We hope there will be a whole big new library
Yes.
with just a shell.
Does increasing electronic books and potentially decreasing the amount of physical books free up space to carve out for other things? I mean,
To some degree. And as far as the space devoted to the book collection, that we just watch very carefully, and we're gonna reduce the collection as demand warrants. So ebooks, there are people who love them and that's all that they read. There are people who are still very dedicated to print, and especially on the children's side, we're not really seeing the children's books go to digital like the adult books are. So I don't see the print collection going away anytime soon. It might shrink, and it might take up more or less space, kind of depending on how we configure the shelving and that kind of thing. But for the foreseeable future, we will definitely have a very robust print collection.
is
Yeah.
shrinkage driven by some, like you're tracking how often books get checked out and that?
Yeah, that's part of our routine collection management is we will look at how many times things are circulating, if it's still popular, if it's worn out, if it's out-of-date information.
Yeah, I think the print collection for little kids is vitally important,
I
because
agree.
they learn the importance of picking up a book, and it's something special when you do that, instead of looking at a tablet.
The other thing Sherry explained to me one time on shrinking was, it's not like you're going away, like she said, from the print books, but maybe historically in the past, if there was some New York Times bestseller, super popular, they would have bought X number of copies. Well, they may still buy X number of copies, but it may be less physical copies because you're offering it on audio and ebook. So it's not as though your shrinkage is not lessening the services. It's maybe diversifying the services, but it may take up less physical space.
Well, cookbooks is a good example. You know, when's the last time you looked at a cookbook versus just looked online for your latest recipe? And we've seen our cookbook collection drop quite a bit.
Magazines too, Sherry, tell them about magazines. We talked about that.
Magazines, they're just going away, and publishers are going out of business. And we are not specifically going out and dropping any of our subscriptions, but every year we we get a notice that such and such magazines just ceasing publication, so those will eventually go away.
But
With the richness of our cultural community and the languages that are spoken in our community, I would love to see some kind of a cultural something. And I don't know if that's kiosks that rotate, I don't know if that's a display, but I would just love that opportunity, since we have so many folks coming in, to be able to celebrate each one of those different groups in some manner.
It's a good idea. And we have I'm sorry.
That really is a good idea.
Yeah. We have a relationship with the Historical Society, and they'll do displays of items from the museum with us too. And that's a really nice.
And that's a great section, the genealogy section. There's no consideration of doing away with that, right?
No.
Well,
to
hold
have,
on, let me clarify that. Are we talking genealogy or the historical?
Well, the historical and genealogy, because they're in the same area.
But the genealogy, I think, does need to be considered, but there is virtually no use of the genealogy room. The historical display, yes.
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 Right.
And
Right.
so I would suggest that that's probably something, the way that people now explore their family tree is significantly different than they might have done in the past. And I think, Sherry, you discussed in the past that room, it gets virtually no use from people coming in to research their family history. But the historical preservation does a great job of bringing a display. So I would suggest that we may look for an opportunity to continue the display, but perhaps that room may need to be repurposed unless, are you seeing that differently?
No, you're
too?
right. You're right.
Okay.
I mean, it's a huge room, but
Right.
maybe there could be 1 or 2 computers like you have now dedicated to genealogy.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely, that's the way people
Yeah.
research it, is
Yeah.
through computers, and so I think and I think really what Sherry had suggested in the past with the vending machine for the laptops, is that there could just be a variety of stations around the library that are more like just various seating areas where you can go and sit and not be confined to one particular spot, but more comfortable seating areas that they can do that. And so I don't even know that it necessarily has to be dedicated, but but we just need to certainly make that's the way that is
Yeah.
done now, and not, the
Yeah.
material is rarely.
And that seems like a simple concept, and it is, but it completely changes when the architect's going through the space, right? We know for a long time that we need more computers, that's what a lot of the people are using. But for myself, I've thought, we keep trying to add banks, and man, we don't have electricity, and how do we add another bank? It really may not be more, when she's said and done, you may see less desktop computers. We won't get rid of them, we'll have them. But what people, correct me if I'm wrong, Sherry, what most of the people are doing is internet-based things. There are some people writing resumes or doing documents or what have you, but you can replace a significant amount of that with what Loretta's talking about, and it does kind of change not only the atmosphere in the library, but it absolutely changes what the architect's trying to design and where we're bringing power and all those things. So that's what's key here.
And I wasn't referring to historical stuff, I was referring to, I was not
Yeah,
addressing the
cultural.
historical, I was.
But I think
current
both of
stuff.
those go hand in hand, being able to display, have displays of the history of the city of Euless along with various cultural displays certainly makes sense, and that certainly makes sense.
Will the storage area also be part of what the architect can reconfigure and move things into that storage area and that storage area located elsewhere?
It's on the table.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
We've not said to him, Mr. Zimmer, you must incorporate this, I think it's about 8,000 square foot of shell space, and we haven't said you can't. It's just kind of, it's in the mix, and we'll see where it all gets. But is there anything, y'all heard with Sherry, what are we missing?
Sherry, have you probably talked to your peer directors elsewhere that maybe have newer libraries, or here's what they've experienced that was great, or things they wish they had done? Have you gotten that kind of feedback from other?
Yeah, we have a pretty active library directors group in the area, and I've made contact with several people who have had building projects recently. And my plan would be to take the architect, a couple of field trips, and show them what worked and what doesn't work, and talk to those library directors and see what their experiences have been too.
You got personal experience, Sherry, tell about that. You're kind of selling yourself short there.
My husband works at the Coppell Public Library, and they just in November had a big remodel, grand opening. And the nice thing is that their previous building was very similar to ours as far as layout and the arch ceiling and different things. So yeah, I've been picking his brain too.
That's great.
I do have one request for your business center. I would love to come in with my own iPad and be able to print. So if I could do some sort of air printing or air dropping or whatever that looks like, so that I don't have to physically log on to your network to print this device.
We actually have that now.
Okay,
Yes.
I need to learn how to do that.
About that.
because I don't have a printer at home, but I would love
Yes.
to come into your operation and pay my dollar and get this printed.
Is the architect we're working with now the one who did it originally?
No.
Good.
We are working with,
Just got under
who was
that.
the architect in the 95, 96 contract?
Actually, the architect we worked with originally, she's a renowned library designer, Danelle Wrightson, but she's recently retired, so she was not even in the running for this project.
That last meeting when y'all authorized city manager to negotiate and execute the professional services agreement, it's Jim Tharp who we're proposing to work with. They're local. Jim lives in Bedford. They're the ones that did the engineering and planning building. They did us a great job over there. They got library experience, and so that's who we're intending to use. So.
I just want to reiterate, my concerns about ADA on that west entry. I mean, we hear that every year about having access ADA on that west entry, so that's going to be my big thing. I want to see that.
We
Sorry,
knew you were going to
Perry,
be
we
late, so
already
we talked
nixed it
about
while
it
you were
already.
gone.
We moved on. We moved on just about it.
And we solved it all, so yeah.
We got the east side door, the street that more parking spaces are that are ADA.
So our
Mr.
city-
Bynum, what we said was,
I disagree totally.
okay, we are going to ask the architect to look at that because we know that that is a
No, we have
issue.
to have it.
Yeah. Technically, the act requires the accessible route, and it's defined. It is the most, I can't think of the word, it's the most direct route, and there's a whole host of things that define that and how that has to be. Can we make another entrance compliant with the other aspects of the act as far as slope and other things? I mean, you could do that. I mean, it may be costly and it may cause site renovations. You can do that. It will never be, from a certification standpoint, you have an ADA compliant entrance that has to meet all the qualifications. In our mind, that's going to be the front entrance of the library as it is today. Is there a way to maybe manipulate some parking? I think there's a perception because of how that entrance sits back that the handicap parking is a great distance from the entryway. So
It
people
is.
will go and they'll park on Shepherd Drive, for instance,
Yeah.
and want to come that back entrance. We're never going to tell them they can't do that, and we may be able to do some sort of improvements to make that, but it will never be, I say it'll never be, it would be huge to make that our ADA compliant entrance, because you would abandon everything else in the front of the building the way it's designed. So I think the goal was going to be, how can we improve accessibility? But I don't want to give you the idea that I don't know that we can even make that ADA compliant in the full sense of the word. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense, but I disagree. I
Okay.
mean, every year, I have 4 or 5 people asking, why can't we get access on the west side? Because eventually, with that property we have on the other side, if we add parking over there, we need access on that west side of the building, and we need an ADA ramp on
But
there.
it's
So
really harder for wheelchair people on that end because there's a big downslope.
they pull right in and get out right there, Mayor. That's their.
But you're talking about the parking across the street and stuff. There's a
No.
huge downslope there.
I know, but I'm only one vote, but I won't vote for it if we don't have an ADA accessible ramp on the west side.
Well, can we back up and say, let's let the architect look
Yeah.
at it and bring us if it's
I
$1
would-
million
I would accept
dollars
that.
and the front
I agree.
entrance is, 20,000 to make a, what we're saying is we may need to change the perception of where they are encouraged to park, and we will absolutely, they will have the most direct route and the closest route that is required by law. But I think we would be premature at this point without having the architect look at it. If there is a way to do a very simple, straightforward, accessible route from that entrance, we certainly will do that. But if it is going to eat up 50% of our budget, then we would certainly not be able to recommend that, because when you get in, if you get into tearing out parking lots and regrading the parking lots and to get the slopes right, then I don't think we can make that commitment. I think
It's $1
we what we
million,
have to.
obviously,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say, yeah, we don't need it over there, but for us not to even consider it, that's wrong.
What,
No, we need to
I'm
see what
sorry,
the
but we,
architect has to say.
absolutely, we just started that, and you missed that part. We started to say we would look at it, but we are of the opinion that it may be cost prohibitive, and we may have to work on focusing on making the front routes much better. So, I mean, that's what we have to do, is make sure that, I think it may be a perception issue now as to, well, it's closer if I park back here, and we may need to, in our routes, make sure that when they come in, they're encouraged to park in the most convenient spaces. and they
Design
have
it
a
so
very
it's more
good route.
compelling to want to park.
Right.
Or either, or close the entrance on the west side.
Now, Mr. Wright, here's what I can tell you for 100% sure. Y'all took your action Tuesday night. This last week, Sherry and I and Kyle had a very, very initial preliminary meeting with the architect to kind of lay out a time frame, tell him we were meeting with y'all, et cetera. But in that meeting, we said, we've got to look at the ADA compliance specifically to the west side. And we said, I don't know if you can, or Les Loretta said how much budget, but we have already actually told him that's got to be in your scope.
Okay,
So
I'll
when you're
accept
saying we got to take a look at it, absolutely, and
Okay.
we've already given that
It
direction.
sounded like we already took it off the table. and
We're
I-
messing with you.
Okay.
No, we were messing with
I
you.
get, y'all do, I mean, I get phone call after phone call, and it's basically from the same 3 or 4 people. They're very passionate about the library, and they are handicapped, they're in a wheelchair, or they're in a walker, and they do not like having to take the extended time to get around to the other side. They said, we have to go up that hill going on the east side. It's hard for us to get in. The west side's so much easier for us to get in. There's just no ramp.
We will have him look at it. But I cannot commit that they will be able to do it because of slopes and everything else, but we will absolutely look at it.
Okay.
And again, we've said all along, is there's a difference between having it as a posted accessible route and the ability for people to use it. We may have a situation where it is not our posted ADA accessible route. That may still be the front, but we still may be able to make it more convenient for those.
Thank you.
They just may not be able to park in a spot
Put
that
a
says
curb, put curb ramp access in it?
That's
parking.
all I'm asking
Yeah,
for.
yeah. So we may be able to do some things that will make it easier for someone to use it, but they may still be parking in a regular spot to access it, because legally we have to post most direct accessible
I
routes.
agree 100%. Don't take, y'all know me, I'm not hard-headed, but when we have an opportunity, a huge opportunity like this, and you hear the same issue every year, why would we not look at it?
Yeah.
That sounded like to me we weren't gonna look at it, so.
No, we were messing with you. We
Okay.
weren't.
Yeah, I probably just did a bad
It was
job
all
telling
up
you
to the
about it, so.
architect to
Okay.
begin
All
with.
right.
Run
Okay.
for 5 minutes and you
Y'all,
better
y'all
run.
know me, I've been on this council a long time.
Where we at on the schedule now?
Yeah.
Where we at on the schedule now?
Yeah.
That's been Sherry's
Yeah.
part, yeah.
Okay, all right, okay.
Obviously.
I'm a top water this morning, okay?
We will try, and we'll try to go back some of our dilemma this morning has been trying to make sure.
Oh,
we
you don't
get
go back on my
everybody-
account, Loretta, don't do
Up
that,
to
don't do that.
speed, okay.
I'm good now, okay? I just wanted to make sure y'all heard my voice, y'all heard it the other day at council, and you will keep hearing that. I'm very passionate about people.
Well, I've just asked y'all to, it's important to us that we let the architect look at it and try to address all the issues, but at the end of the day, when we come down to budget, we will just have to decide at that point
Of
where the
course,
priorities are.
like we always do,
Okay.
like we always do. And we can agree to disagree, and we move on.
Okay.
What else do we need to
We-
put in our plan? Anything we're missing from what Sherry's looked at? I mean, obviously, we'll be coming to you during the process with updates, and this isn't your single chance for input, but we are gonna kick this off.
Are we gonna make the physical facility a limitation, or are we willing to build another building?
I would say,
An additional building, I'm sorry.
I would say there is shelf space that is on the table. There is nothing outside the walls that's on the table. I think budgetarily, it would be impossible. But we have a significant amount of shelf space that is absolutely on the table as an option. And we're not telling him you have to incorporate it, we're just saying, let's define what our needs are. Let's see how we best meet those, and if you need to take that in, it's an option.
Sherry, you've done a great job
Thank you very much.
of thinking about all the wants too, because there are things that I never even would have dreamt of.
So the next piece of this, I believe, Chris, if you go to your next slide, is going to be